Okay, go ahead.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome to our final cafe for the year for 2022 on traditions and culture in our community. When we look at traditions and culture, especially during the holiday time, we think of all the sales and all the commercial things that we are bombarded with. But I think it is very, so it is true, many holidays during this holiday time, because of that, our cultures and traditions are trivialized. Yet we also seem to forget the true meaning of the holiday season. So traditions matter because traditions represent a critical piece of our culture. They help us to form structure and foundation for families and for our societies. They remind us that we are part of history and that defines our past, shapes who we are today and who we are likely to become. Once we ignore the meaning of traditions, we're in danger of damaging the unpin of our identity. So traditions contribute a sense of comfort and belonging. It brings families together and enables people to connect with friends. Traditions reinforce values such as freedom, faith, equity, education, personal responsibility, ethics, and the value of being selfless. So today we have three wonderful guests on our panel. We have Mrs. Juanita Garner, who has been a long-time resident of Palm Springs and a personal friend of mine, who will talk to us about the Mexican tradition in our communities. We have Lily Khanbegian, who is a student and someone I've known since she was very young, who is going to open the door to the to the Armenian culture in our communities. And we have Dr. Dr.
Augustine Kposowa.
Dr. Augustine Kposowa, who is going to open that conversation and the culture from, which is very new to me, on the traditions from the African cultures and also the meaning of Kwanzaa in our community. We have Zubair, who is also going to work, who is going to give us a part of, actually share with us on the culture of Kwanzaa. So welcome everybody. So let's start with our panel from, we'll start with Juanita Garner about the Mexican culture and traditions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and hello everyone. So I'm Mexican, my family is Mexican. We came to this country when I was about 3 years old. And one of the things that was vital to not only my family, but other Mexican families in my community was that those traditions that we brought from Mexico continued. It helped in so many ways to unite us, to know that we were, even though we were in a different country and people were speaking a different language, we still had community. And so it was very important to us. So in Mexican culture, it revolves around religion. All our Christmas traditions come from the Catholic faith. So one of the most important things is, I think, is with many cultures, involves the birth of Christ, right? So we celebrate the birth of Christ, and one of the most traditional ways to celebrate that is to reenact the journey of Mary and Joseph returning to Bethlehem, and then the birth of Jesus. And so the recreation is children, usually children, dress up as Mary and Joseph, and they go The tradition is to go house to house, or like they went inn to inn asking for shelter. So you go to the homes of friends and family, and you knock on their door and you ask for shelter. You are repeatedly denied shelter. And as you knock on doors, those people then join you in the search for shelter. That search ends at a home that has been designated as the place that's going to let you in. And at that home, they invite you in, they invite Mary and Joseph in. And then there's food and there are games, and it's a party, right? It's a celebration to celebrate. And those are called, we call that tradition posadas. A posada means that you're offering help or you're giving assistance to someone. So posadas are how we celebrate Christmas, the most traditional way. But that word posada is also used to offer help to anyone during any time of year, right? Any time of the year, if you're offering somebody some food or shelter or help in any way, it can be a posada. Of course, the menu of food is it's very varied. So there is pozole, which is a soup that's made from corn. We use corn and we use chicken or beef or pork. There's tamales, which a lot of people are familiar with, which is the dough and meat-filled corn husks that are very traditional in Mexico. The other thing around this time of year that's very traditional is that we make special kinds of drinks that are also based with corn, and they're very thick drinks, but imagine a smoothie, only they're hot, they're served hot, right? So that is what makes the holidays very special for us, is the sharing of food. And so this tradition of posada continues throughout the holiday season until Christmas. It begins the 1st of December. And each night or every other night, there is a home that is assigned to be the home to receive the people in the procession. And so we celebrate at different people's homes. They share their food with us. Contribution of offering their home, and then giving us the food that they, they're made to their style, right? So you get to taste lots of different things. Of course, there's a lot of sweets as well for the kids. And one other tradition is the piñata. So piñatas, people think of piñatas for birthday parties, but the tradition began at Christmas. And the piñatas were a Christmas tradition. And the piñata was a star shaped vessel that holds candy, and the children would hit the piñata with a stick, and of course the candy would come out, and the children pick up the candy, and it's a very fun, very festive. There's songs that go along with it, and so that is part of community. And it's not just families, it's not just you inviting your family to a posada. Posada is extended to the community. The community is invited. So you're not just sharing with your family and close friends, but you're also inviting other people that may not have a place to go or a place to celebrate into the community. So posadas are very welcoming to everyone. And that's basically, how we celebrate the season. Of course, there are religious things. We go to mass, usually a midnight mass at Christmas, but that is the most traditional way that we celebrate. So if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them. But that's it.
This visiting the different homes and knocking on the doors and getting that answer no, this is all part of a journey, right? It gives us a more in-depth on.
It's very much so. And I think that for many immigrants, coming to this country, that is a very, very symbolic to the immigrant community as well. Because when we came here, we came seeking shelter, we came seeking safety, and a lot of times doors were closed, right? People were not willing to offer us that help. So I think here, for immigrants living here in the United States, the Posadas is very personal in a different way, other than just reenacting the journey of Mary and Joseph, but also our journey getting here and being able to thrive here.
Yes, wonderful story. Yes, thank you very much, Juanita. Anyone else has any questions to ask Juanita? In fact, I met Juanita at a posada.
This is Edwin. I have a question. Hi, Juanita.
Yes, Edwin.
You know, your family recently hosted a family from Asia. Can you tell us about that? It's very much in the tradition of Posada.
Yes, thank you, Edwin. Yes, my family recently, through the school where I work, I met a family of refugees from Afghanistan. And they were in this country, they were brought in because they helped the Americans during the war in Afghanistan. It was a family of 9, the parents and then 7 children. The way our country works, unfortunately, is that we brought these immigrants here, or these refugees here, and then gave them a limited amount of time where they had housing. Once that time elapsed, basically they were homeless. Homeless without knowing the language, without being able to support themselves or even know where to go to find help. So we quite literally picked the people up from the street. They had been evicted from the place they were being given, and they were now on the street. And so we brought them into our home, and they lived here with us for about a month or so, month and a half, until we were able to find them housing and help them get a little more established. We helped the family, the older children and the father, find a job. And so it was quite an adventure for all of us. They're a Muslim family, so we had to be respectful and mindful of that and their culture and tradition as well. But it was a wonderful experience for my family to host them in our home and to get to know them and to really understand a little bit more about the Muslim faith, which I was not very familiar with. And thankfully, this opportunity came to me. The family has now relocated to Corona, where there is a big community from Afghanistan. And so they're very happy to be amongst other people from Afghanistan. And so we're very happy that we were able to help them transition to Corona, and that they now feel a sense of community there. So that was, thank you, Edwin, for reminding me of that. That really was a very meaningful time for my family, working with this family of refugees.
Yes, thank you for sharing. It is wonderful. Yes. So, any other questions? Or Lily, would you like to go next?
Sure. Okay. Is that okay if I share my screen or?
Yes, of course.
Okay, I made a little PowerPoint. Thank you so much, Juanita. That was really beautiful. And thank you, Ms. Jilska, for having me. I just want to disclose, for Armenian Christmases and heritage, I actually asked my grandfather because I am a 3rd generation. So I'm not fully Armenian, but he grew up with a huge Armenian influence and background back in Boston. And there was like a huge community after they immigrated from Armenia because of the diaspora and that. But I made like a little presentation. I interviewed him to get more of an insight because he was actually raised Armenian Orthodox, but I grew up Catholic. So I knew Armenians celebrated, well, I'll get into the presentation here. Let me share this. Okay, so what is an Armenian Christmas? So this is an actual picture when we took my grandfather to Armenia, and that was like one of the most amazing trips. This is actually Arat. Arat is supposed to be, according to the Bible, where the flood happened and Noah's Ark happened, but unfortunately we couldn't go and see Arat because it's in Turkey right now. But this is my grandfather, my mom, and I in Armenia. So this is according to Richard, or my grandfather. So Armenians actually celebrate Christmas on the Epiphany, and it's known as the Little Christmas because according to Armenians, the Epiphany is more crucial because that's when the three kings or the three wise men came to recognize that the Son of God is there. Like they saw Jesus in person, and this is like huge celebration because God let his only son come to earth and save us, which is really exciting. And then, so why do Armenians celebrate it? So it's just basically the three wise men, according to Christianity and Catholicism, came and visited the child on January 6th and saw baby Jesus in Bethlehem. So the major differences of our Armenian Christmas versus a Christian Christmas is more the Epiphany is the religious aspects of it. According to Armenians, in December 25th is still a huge part of the Armenian church, but it's more focusing on the bigger picture, if that makes sense. And then I asked my grandfather, I love Armenian food and I wish my grandma would make more Armenian food, but luckily like my mom does. But when we would go see my great grandma Anne in Boston, she would make us more of traditional Armenian meals, which is like kind of Mediterranean style, which is like lamb chops that are like kind of prepared with a lot of like herbs, like rosemary, and then like sometimes a little bit of Armenian brandy, just like traditional herbs and stuff like that. And then they would have like the doma, which is fig wrapped. Either it could be lamb or vegetarian. So it could be like fig wrapped lamb, or it could be fig wrapped like vegetables for like your choice. And he said that his grandmother and his mother would make like a huge meal for the whole, basically all the relatives or any friends. It was more of like focusing more on like coming together as like a community and just celebrating like a really good, important time, like in holidays or just like an important time of year, coming together and focusing on like each other and like that God is born and this is a really exciting time. And he said that like his mom would make really good desserts like baklava, which is almost like phyllo bread, like honey, and then nuts. It's like one of my favorites. A lot of people probably know baklava. I wish I had some right now. And then I asked him like what was his favorite Armenian tradition, and he said it was definitely participating in a Christmas mass. He said that Armenian Orthodox masses are usually tend to be around like 2 hours, but since Christmas is held as like a high mass, it was celebrated almost up to 3 hours, which is pretty interesting. And he was excited because the whole masses are Armenian, but you had to read Armenian. And I don't know if you've ever seen Armenian, but it almost looks like almost like script rather than traditional English. So it's a little bit more complicated. So he said that when he was practicing with his grandfather, it was a lot. He let him practice with phonetics until like he really got the words down, because I think he said this was around like when he was like 10 or 11. And then he said that he loves celebrating, like Christmas is probably like his favorite, and Easter, because during mass, like it was so beautiful, because he said like the mass, like the entire church was like filled and like everyone's just like singing, and it's just like a really good time of like bringing the community together. So he was really excited about that. And then so some of the traditions that are celebrating during an Armenian mass is basically, it is like a high mass. So Easter and Christmas are the two highest holidays in the Armenian church. And he just said like one of his favorite things was like singing along to like the choir and just seeing like everyone just be a unit and like just enjoy each other's company. And he just said one of the most things that he remembers is there was so much incense burned that it filled the entire church. So everyone just smelled like the church, which is pretty cool. And then I asked him if you would still celebrate Christmas, like the birth of Christ, on the 25th. And he said that they did. And it was just more of like celebrating his birthday rather than the actual meaning of Christmas, if that makes sense. And he said they do believe in, I was curious because if they do believe in Santa Claus or not. And he said yes, just as like Catholics or Christians would. And it would be celebrated more on like the 25th was like more of like the material aspect of Christmas, where like the Epiphany was like serious and more of like the religious aspect of Christmas. And then I asked him how to say Merry Christmas in Armenian. I do not speak Armenian, so I may butcher this, but it's Shanor Nor Dari Ya Serp Tusun, which is basically Happy New Year and Merry Christmas. Since Christmas is celebrated after New Year, you'd wish someone a Happy New Year and then Merry Christmas. So that was pretty cool to learn. And then this is Shanor Halom, which is thank you. And then this is just like my grandfather and I.
Oh.
So does anyone have any questions or comments? Yes.
Yes, Monica.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Lily, for sharing that. So it's very interesting to me that you said that the Christmas, the 25th of the Christmas was the commercial part of it, and then the Epiphany was the more spiritual part of the celebration. So in Mexican culture, we don't get gifts at Christmas. Mm-hmm. The children get gifts on the Epiphany because the kings brought the gifts to the baby, and so that's when children get their gifts in the Mexican culture. So we don't actually get them at Christmas; we get them. So it's kind of the reverse of what you were saying. But that's beautiful. We also celebrate the Epiphany. That's lovely. Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much.
Lily, after these pictures, I would love to go to Armenia to look at the Mount Ararat that we read so often about in the Bible, right?
Yes, all these pictures were actually from when I try to resource my own pictures just from when we took from Armenia. And luckily my uncle took way more pictures than I did. But Ararat is beautiful, and hopefully one day I would love to climb it because it is like a huge part of the Bible. And it is such a beautiful place, and it's just so nice to go and see your homeland, or the motherland. It's just so beautiful to take in the culture and like the food and just like the religious aspect. Like one of the coolest things that we did was on Father's Day, we were able to go to the head, like the main church, like Eshmiazin, which is where like the head of basically like the equivalent of like the head of the Armenian church. And we were able to see a full like Armenian mass and actually like meet him, which was so beautiful. And it's just like, it's so cool to experience like something that I'm surprised because I'm surprised my grandpa didn't like bring it up more, but this is the culture that he grew up in. So it's so nice to go back and actually like revisit your heritage. And I keep on telling him to go to like an Armenian mass, like in Ranch Mirage, and like just see like St. Garabed, but we'll have to see.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you, Lily. Thank you very much. Any other questions? Anyone else has any questions?
Yes.
Dr. Kposowa.
Is the Armenian Church under the Bishop of Rome, or is it an independent church? The Armenian.
Technically, the Armenian Orthodox Church is separate from the Catholic Church. So we, like Armenians, were recognized, I think like 380 or something, as the first Christian nation. So they adopted like Armenian culture and like more of like Armenian Orthodox way of Christianity, where it's very, very similar to Catholicism, but they have their own leader of the church, but they do have like an agreement or like an alliance with the Catholic Church, if that makes sense.
Yes, yes.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Wonderful. Let us hear from Dr. Kposowa.
Screen. From the beginning. Okay. So Zubair and I will be talking about Kwanzaa, given the background, the origins from Africa, and the celebration itself. Kwanzaa is often described as a yearly holiday, and on this holiday, we affirm the African family and its strengths and its social values. It is also considered a time when we bring good into the world. The holiday is celebrated in the United States at least from December 26th onto the 1st of January. But in the United States, I have seen a lot of misunderstanding in terms of what happens in Africa and how Kwanzaa is celebrated here. So I will give some of the misunderstandings, and Zubair also will give some misunderstandings. The origins of the name and the celebration were begun by Dr. Maluma Karenga. At that time, he was a professor at Cal State, Long Beach. He was what we call an Africanist or an Afrocentric person. So the word Kwanzaa itself, it means first fruits, coming from the Swahili phrase, matunda ya kwanza. Now, why did Kwanzaa come to be created? So this is where I think I really need to explain. Kwanzaa came about because of circumstances in the 1960s, the civil rights movement, and then other things that will happen later under President Reagan and President Bill Clinton. So Dr. Malema Karenga himself was actually born here in the United States. He had an African name. This name that we see is not his name. But in the 1960s, something happened in America that sort of pushed him to establish this holiday. So the first thing that happened was the civil rights movement was going on. The civil rights legislation signed in 1964. And there was a senator called Patrick Moynihan, Daniel Patrick Moynihan. He was a sociologist, actually, while he went to Congress. He wrote a book that was very, very controversial through the 70s, the 80s, and even the 90s. I remember when I went to graduate school and I wrote a paper on that book. It was called The Negro Family, the Case for National Action. So that was Moynihan's book, published in 1965. And then in January, actually 65, President Johnson, who was given his first State of the Union message to Congress, sort of cited that book, or cited it. Now the book had something very, very negative about African-American people, Black people at the time. although it has some positive sides, but Moynihan wrote a book that somehow reduced the positive side, and people read and focused mainly on the negative side. So the negative side was about the Black family. He wrote that 25% of urban Negro marriages, quoting from him, they used Negro at the time, 25% of urban Negro families are dissolved. In other words, a quarter of all Black families end up in divorce and separation. The second point he made was a quarter of Negro births are out of wedlock. At the time, they call it illegitimate births. He also wrote that a quarter of Negro families are headed by women. So the main conclusion he made was the African-American people, the Negro people, the Black people, they are somehow pathological. They have different pathologies. And that is why they were not making it good in America. Like whites in the upper class, you put whites in the upper class and Blacks in the upper class. White upper class will go up fast. The Black upper class will not. And a lot of the Black people are concentrated in the lower class. He was making these comments in the book. So the book took on a life of its own. A lot of Americans, especially white Americans, they read it and they started looking at Black people in a certain way, as Moynihan had put it. He basically shamed African-American people and their families and so on. There's a lot of controversy about the book. So then, when we came to Malema, as I said, he was born in Maryland, I believe. His name was Ronald McKinley Everett. So Mose Malema Karenga, that was an African name that he took on. It was also a time of history where people were being urged to drop their quote unquote slave names and take on African names. There's this Back to Africa and Black and Proud, James Brown. So people were taking on African names and they reacted to Moynihan's book by getting more to know about Africa and African customs and traditions. So it was in that context that you need to understand how Kwanzaa came to be created. He created the Kwanzaa to rebut Senator Moynihan, who has said African families are matriarchal, they are dysfunctional. Hey, before white people even came to this country, Africans had great civilizations, great culture, and they valued families. So that is how the holiday came to be established, at least in the United States. It was celebrated by African Americans. So as I say here, it began as an African American holiday, but despite the holiday starting in the United States, it is now widely celebrated in the UK, for example, in South Africa, in the Caribbean. And it is now celebrated as a Pan-African holiday, which is what Dr. Karenga himself wanted. That was not only about African Americans, but all over the world where Africans are. Anybody that can trace their origin to Africa, the holiday is for them, or the celebration. Celebration itself peaked during the 1980s and 1990s. Why did it peak in the 1980s and 1990s? Again, there's a direct line to the Black family, the case for national action for that. Because after the book was published, President Nixon came in, the Southern strategy that he tried to use to divide whites against blacks to win election. So in the 1980s and the 1960s, you have President Reagan, who came to office, basically alleging that Black people are on welfare, the only people on welfare. And some of these women on welfare, they have refrigerators and freezers. If you open them, beefs or meats will fall out. They have all the beef and everything. So Reagan was saying these things out loud. He campaigned on that and he won re-election. So after Reagan's time, Bill Clinton came in the 1990s, basically used Black people, pretending to be on their side, so to speak, but his policies are really not helping them. He came and said, we have to end welfare as we know it, must end welfare as we know it. So whether Democratic president or Republican president, with the exception of Jimmy Carter, they were all following this pathological line about the African family, Africans being on welfare, African Americans being on welfare, and so on. So in reaction to this, the celebration of Kwanzaa rose up because it was basically preaching about the values of African people, their origin, and that they should adopt the names, they should adopt African names and also African culture. When you read the books he has written, and you visit African Americans in the way they celebrate Kwanzaa, it is not quite like how African culture really is. They get certain things and then they are Americanized. And Zubair will tell you some of these areas. So that's just the background. And Zubair and I, he's more familiar with Swahili. I'm from the West Coast. I'm familiar with languages on the West Coast. So he's going to take over now and talk Swahili.
Okay, thank you. Many appreciate it. When you look at the Kwanzaa, there are some principles that you see on the screen, which are 7. But when you look at all those principles are Swahili words. And the Swahili is really, it depends to who is writing, but it's between 20 to 40% of the Swahili language is Arabic. And within Swahili also, you find that we have English words, we have Portuguese, we have German, and English, and also Persian. So being said, the rest of the Swahili is from the Bantu languages. So mainly when you go to Africa, you will find that Swahili, there are some countries that is official language. Mainly when you go to Tanzania, Swahili is an official language. And when you go to Kenya, it's official. When you go to Uganda, it's official constitutionally. It was passed in 1997, but it's not used because of how expensive it is to translate all the English into Swahili to be used really. And the language is also used in the Democratic Republic of Congo, the Comoros Island, Burundi, Rwanda, Northern Zambia, Malawi, Mozambique. So Swahili is really a language that is really used in Africa most of the time. And it's the commanding language that in most African countries, taking off the North Africa, that is more Arabs, used as a military commanding language. In the military, that's the language they use. Mainly when you look at the first principle is umoja, which means unity. It's a Swahili, which means umoja. And umoja, it comes from a word moja, moja, which means one. So when you put you umoja, you're meaning unity. So then we have what to kujichagulia. Kujichagulia here, it is really brought as self-determination, but it's really some people you have to have your own choice. So here it was brought in as all Africans to have that opportunity to have self-determination. And also we have Wujima, collective responsibility. And when you look at how that word, it really brings in the community. It's really used in Africa most of the time. When you are saying Wujema, you're looking at Jamaa, which means a group. And when we are talking Jamaa, also it comes from Arabic, which in Arabic is a Jamaa. If you go, for example, to Muslims when they pray, the prayer that they pray in a group is called Jamaa. So what it means, they are praying in a group. Then we have Ujamaa. Ujamaa is really used also to come together as a community, to be a community together, to work together economically. Mainly, when you look at this scenario, you're looking at how you can come together to have cooperative economics, build your own businesses as Black people, control the economics of our own community. That's really what they were saying, and then share the wealth that you get from there. Then when you look at the fifth one, which is purpose, it is near. Near, it also comes from Arabic, which is really intention. Arabic near, it means intention in Arabic. So then when you come to creativity, kuumba is not really just a creativity, but it might say that, but you're looking at creativity where you can create art, where you can create everything. So they take it creativity. Faith, when you look at the seventh one, which means faith, it's really iman. It's also an Arabic word, which means a belief sometimes. So you go on and they look at when they celebrate. This is really in the US here. This holiday, it starts on the 26th December, whereby that day you have to talk about Umoja, which is the unity. The 27th, Kujechagulia, you have to talk about that. Then on 28th, they talk about Ujima. Then on 29th, they're talking about the economics. So African Americans, so Blacks have to come together and do that. Then they go back to Nia, the purpose of what really they came up with. So mainly the families are organized based on these principles. So when you come here, they have certain things here that really are related to African community, but when you go to Africa, they are done differently. When you're talking about Kinara really here, they say candle holder, but over there, it's like a stove. We use in Africa what we do. For example, if you have a function, you burn fire, you bring firewood and you put a big fire together. And when you put that fire together, what really means is that they used to do it most of the time, according to what the word Kwanzaa means, it means really the beginning. And the beginning of what? You look at, they say matunda. Matunda is really the plural of tunda. Tunda, it means fruit. So matunda, it means the fruits. So mainly in Africa, the way we do what they are calling here matunda is that it's a time when you go and when you harvest. During that time, mainly historically, even up to now sometimes, if somebody has a big garden, they harvest. And during the time of harvest, they come together as a team. You might find 100 people, 50 people, 10 people, they come together to harvest. So when they harvest, at the end of harvesting, they celebrate. And in that celebration, they use whatever food they get. They cook some of the food and they eat. That's a big feast. And what they do also, they give away to that team that came in to give them some part of the food that they have harvested. And also what they do, because they are many most of the time, they will really have a shelter. And that shelter, most of the time, it would not be a house, but they would put a shade that is really big because there are many people and sometimes they sleep outside. So they used to sleep outside and they burn that fire for warmth, also to scare away animals, wild animals, because they would come and harm them. So they still use it up to today in Africa. What they do, like when there is a burial, if somebody dies, they burn that. So this is really a culture that is not really related to only fruits, but it's related to all foods. And you see here in the picture, we have a family whereby they have the fruits, they have this maize. This corn is really corn that they're really showing. So those are some of the differences. And when you look at the colors, they have the colors. They have black, red, green, black. So these colors really represent different things. But according to the different things in Africa, from these colors, what we have seen is that it has changed to be that each country has a flag. And with that flag, it has different colors. So it depends to what country you go to. Like if you were to come to Uganda, we have our flag is red, black, and yellow. When you look at red, black, it means that the people who live there, majority are black. It's a black nation. When you look at the red, it says that although people who live there are black, but they have red blood that unite all of us as human beings, we all have red blood. Then when you look at the yellow, the interpreter is saying the country there, the sun shines through out to the air. So here they use really the candles, and these candles here in the United States during Kwanzaa, they present different things as explained, as would be explained, but we don't have much time. So I want just to go through and see. So they tell you how they prepare for Kwanzaa. The preparation of Kwanzaa, here, this is how they do it. The family selects a central place in the home for the Kwanzaa set. The symbols of Kwanzaa are chosen. A table is then spread with a beautiful piece of African cloth. Mukeka, the mat, is placed down and all of the other symbols are placed on it or immediately next to it. So when you go to Africa, it's done differently because mainly in Africa, they do it outside. You don't have to be in the house. You do it outside. And when you do it outside, you use sometimes even banana fiber mat. You can use any kind of thing that you can sit on. And it's not obligatory that somebody has to use a mukeka or mat. They can use even banana leaves. They can use anything to sit on. Even nowadays, they use chairs. So the symbols of the fruits over there, really, it depends what fruit or what plant or you harvest. Here is the way it is done. People are invited and they come together as African American to celebrate Kwanzaa, and this is part of it. And here, Kwanzaa, I would like to invite Dr. Kposowa to talk about this here.
What are you looking at? Slide.
Slide 14, where Kwanzaa not a religious holiday.
Okay. Yes, this is a mistake. Sometimes some people feel like Kwanzaa is a religious holiday. It is not. It was started as a secular holiday. And then the Kinira itself, it's similar somewhat to the Jewish menorah. People know about the Jewish menorah, go up and down. But Kwanzaa is not connected to Judaism at all. So the celebration begins usually on Boxing Day. Boxing Day in much of Africa, just like UK, Canada, it is the day after Christmas. And often sports events are held on Boxing Day and people get prizes in the former British colonies. So it is neither related to nor intended to supplant the Christian Christmas. It is completely secular. Although sometimes some people may bring, they hold it in the church, some people may bring crosses and so on. But it's important to remember that there is no bearing. So for us, this is the end of our presentation due to time restrictions. So entertain questions.
Yes, wonderful. Any questions?
So you guys, if you have any question or if you feel like there is something you want to know more, because I went on really skipping some slides, but if you have a question, ask. If there is something you did not understand, please ask and we can go back.
So I have a question.
Yes.
So since this is a secular celebration, it's not connected to religion. Do you find that people who celebrate Kwanzaa are both religious and non-religious people? I mean, or is it just people that are not religious that are celebrating it, or is it go together?
Oh, it is open to human beings, regardless of religion, whether they believe in God or not, whether they are Catholics, Protestants, it doesn't matter at all. It is just, it's a secular holiday celebrated within the Christmas season.
I have a question.
Yes.
So would you say Kwanzaa is a tradition?
Yes, I would say it is a tradition, but a tradition that is really has different versions, because the person who developed the Kwanzaa here, although he's African American, he needed to work with either African traditionals on the continent to be able to unite everything. But I feel it's a traditional based to Africa and even what they do here, what is done here.
Okay.
Unless if Dr. Kposowa has it's different answer, but that's how it is.
Yes, and in slide 7, picture of the family sitting there. Professor Karenga talked about gift giving. That was a mistake, because when the tradition is, we don't say, in every country in Africa that I have visited, when the first fruit, the first harvest is brought in and people sit around the fire to celebrate, to dance, and then to eat, the gift given is done using the fruits that they have brought. It is not gift given like as people celebrate Christmas here in the United States or around the world. For example, if you have a big rice farm and you have a big harvest, so you give, when people come to eat, you give some of your rice to the people. If you have lots of goats or lots of cows, and then you slaughter a cow or so, people come to visit, you give them little bits and pieces of the cow so they can go and cook. So that is the only type of gifts that are exchanged. And like you give somebody a cow, he or she is not supposed to give you a gift in return. Whoever has, if you have more, you give more. So like in this family, I see gifts like Christmas gifts. So that deviates from the African gift given. It's more Americanized.
Yeah. Very interesting. Just typing in, myself coming from Sri Lanka, I can see very parallel cultures from the African culture too. So in like gift, we don't, like Kwanzaa, we celebrate the new year in April, and that is based on the harvest festival. So we have ceremonies that help to close the old year, and we have ceremonies that welcome the new year. The closing the old year is having, cleaning your home, and then we all get around this drum and we start beating the drum and getting rid of the old year. But welcoming the new year, you wear a particular color that is given from the equinox calendar, and so everyone wears that color or something with that color to celebrate the welcoming of the new year. So I see very much parallels of my culture to the African culture, and more so it becomes a tradition as just coming to the United States and now help trying to initiate these traditions into our families and our children. It has now been taken on a tradition.
Yeah.
I have a question.
Yes.
Yes. Good evening, everyone. This is Philip Frazier. I had a question. Each year the Muslims celebrate. I'm drawing a blank now. They have a religious holiday where they get together. You have the pilgrimage to Mecca, and everyone gets together internationally. So in America, to celebrate Kwanzaa, is there any type of celebration that we can get to, where we can connect like everyone on an international level as well as a United States level and other countries? Anything like kind of similar to the pilgrimage to Mecca?
From what I know as a Muslim, we have two celebrations. One is called Eid al-Adha. The Eid al-Adha is the Eid of sacrificing. And when you look at the books, they say that's the time when Abraham was trying to sacrifice his son, Ismail. So when he was trying to do that, instead of that, a lamb was sent and he sacrificed that. So Muslims go to Mecca to do that pilgrimage, and then when they finish, they have that celebration. And then there is another one that they call Eid al-Fitr. That's the Eid, or the celebration, that is done after the fasting of 30 days. When, based on your question, do we have something like that? I think when you look at Africans, what would bring us together is the Kwanzaa, because really Kwanzaa is celebrated worldwide. You go to UK, you go to Africa, it has that tradition. So we just have to come together and be able to teach our people how we can celebrate together, but also teaching them what exactly the meaning and where it comes from the African perspective, and we get together and we can celebrate. This is a good thing that it was started. We have also to contribute, because when I look at the person who started, he did a good thing, because if all people are celebrating, how about us, African American here? So that's how I feel that this will be a thing, and it's easy for us to do, because when you look at Swahili words that are there, umoja, all these words have good meanings. Mm-hmm. And when you look at Swahili, it's an easy language to be able to teach, because we have English. Like when you are saying hospital, in Swahili we say sebitali. When you say police, we say polisi. When you say music in English, we say music. So it is a language that we can really use, and we can bring all these Kwanzaa and other things. As you say that African American here, they celebrate, even in Africa, that's what we do. We get together, we dance, we sing, the drums, everything, we eat. So these are things. The clothes, we love color clothes. So we find like different colors. So I think maybe a shorter answer, I'm sorry, I'm going into many things, but that's what I think. I don't know if Dr. Kposowa has a take on it, but that's how I feel that this could bring all Black people together on the African continent and even in the diaspora. Thank you.
Yes, in the US and the UK, what often happens is that people will hire large rooms, halls, and celebrate Kwanzaa. Also in the Black church, there's a tradition. I don't know much about California, but when I lived in Michigan and Ohio, so Kwanzaa, the feast day is celebrated in the church. If the church has a separate room, yes. If not, they hold it actually in the sanctuary. They remove some of the benches. And then people bring the gifts. Of course, the gifts they'll bring just like the wrapped gift that the family had. And then they can sometimes unite churches. They go to the largest church. They can bring a lot of people in the smaller churches of the Baptist church or the Methodist church to celebrate. So that's the way it is. But in this presentation, we also wanted today to say, okay, Dr. Karenga started it here, but as we go forward, we would like to make some corrections that you have made. Corrections in the language, corrections in terms of representing certain things here that had different meaning in culture in Africa. For example, that picture of people sitting in a hall. There's a picture there of people sitting in a hall. Well, in Africa, they are not going to sit in front of the hall. They'll be sitting outside, sitting on the leaves of banana, sitting on the leaves of plantain. They will be sitting down. They don't have the luxury here of the nice dress tables and red chairs and so on. So it has been African Americanized. The African version has been Americanized. So we had to point those small distinctions. But all of a sudden, I think it's a good celebration to have for people to anchor their background on the African continent, whether they were born there or born here, because it brings unity between people of African descent, no matter where they live or where they are.
Wonderful conversation. Thank you. We have come to the end. I think our time is up. We are 6 minutes over. Thank you very much, Juanita, Lily, and Dr. Kposowa. Thank you very much for taking part in our cafe today. I hope that we can continue these conversations. And we'll see you next year.
Next year is too far.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
Take care. Have a wonderful holiday season.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Happy holidays, everyone.
Happy holidays.